Hi, and welcome to a Sober Girls podcast. My name is Sherry, and I have been through various ups and downs over my time in sobriety. The one thing I love about my journey is that it's brought me to you and helping others in sobriety. If you are listening to this, then you are either wanting to start your journey or currently active in recovery and just want to hear other people's experience, strength, and hope. Either way, we are here for you, and we are the community to help you through whatever part of your journey you are on. We have something for everyone. Now, let's get started on today's journey. All right. Tune. Hey fam, what's up? It's Sherry. Happy Wednesday. I am here with my friend Tyler. Tyler, say hi.
All right.
Tyler is going to be talking to us today about his experience, strength, and hope. Tyler and I have gotten to know each other over TikTok. All of you know that I am a huge social media person, and I recently started watching TikTok because someone told me that the videos were really funny, and I landed on a couple of FYPs, and I managed to find Tyler. And when I found him, he was wearing a U of M hoodie, so I was kind of excited. That was awesome. And then after about a month or two of watching him, he made a video about his addiction, and I went, what? People were putting that on TikTok was so cool. So, Tyler, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll just see what happens with this conversation.
Sure. Sounds good. Well, grew up, so 34 years old, adopted from Korea by my parents, Jim and Kathy. I grew up in Edina. Try not to judge me for that.
Man.
Yep. I grew up in Land of Cake. Yep. Which we'll come back to that. Have one sister who is also adopted from Korea. Most probably frequently asked question I get is, are you actually brother and sister? Not by blood, but we did grow up together.
Okay.
So, funny story is the agency that my parents used, I actually ended up working for, Children's Home Society, as part of the larger organization that I currently work for now. So it's kind of funny how things come full circle.
Full circle.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So, grew up in Edina, went through school system there, ended up graduating and going out to University of Denver for a few years.
Oh.
Lived out in Denver for about 3.5 years. Absolutely loved every minute of it. Loved it a little too much. Okay, we'll get to
Before
that.
everything was legal.
Right. And then, my journey, as where this all kind of starts, brought me back home to Minnesota and went through treatment and stuff there and refound my roots here and been here ever since.
Awesome. So are you a fan of the U of M, or did you go to school there as well?
No, I went to Denver, and then when I had to finish up school, I came back here and I went to Augsburg. So right across the street from the U.
Okay.
I got to stare at it from across the street.
You got to covet everything there.
Yes.
Like a good football program.
Pretty much.
Oh, yep. That's hilarious. Okay, so what did you major in college?
Communications.
Yeah. Well, that definitely shows, because you are far better at communicating than I ever could be.
Well, when I was in school, it was that whole conundrum of what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And that's a big question.
Huge.
So I just kind of started taking random classes and kept taking the ones that I liked. And about junior year, I realized, well, I guess I'm a communications major since that's all the classes that I've taken. Don't know really what I'm supposed to do with that, but I'll figure it out.
And don't you feel like that pressure is something that is so, I try not to do it to my son. I really don't, but that futuristic, you have to have a plan is so so stressful because now not only are you letting your college down, your parents down, yourself down,
Mhm.
like it's I'm not ready for Trevin to go to college, like because he needs to know how important it is so he doesn't screw it up.
Yeah, I think I've learned when it's time for the girls to make that decision, like it's not going to be, when I was growing up, it very much was this idea of, and again, it kind of was that Edina culture a little bit, a lot of it, that you graduate high school and then it's off to college. And so my senior year, most free, everybody that I would see, first question was, "What are you doing next year? Where are you going?"
Yep.
So
Where
where
are
are
you
you going?
going?
Where are you going to
Yep.
college? Um, and I knew people that said, like, I'm not. Like, I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to figure out what I want to do. And that was a really, like, strange thing to a lot of
Yeah.
people.
Because you're never going
Um,
back to college again if you do that.
no, because that window closes. Yeah. So at 18, 19, and 20, you got to figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
For the next 62 years, according to Social Security.
And you don't know how the world works, let alone what you want to do in it. So
Yep.
it's a lot of pressure.
Absolutely.
You're right.
It is a lot of pressure. So do you feel that your journey starting out in high school is where you started having trouble, or was it not
Yeah.
until you got, for me it was, I felt that trouble, I felt that pressure in high school, and I was introduced to alcohol by my parents, by my father,
Mm-hmm.
um, and marijuana by my brother, and that was in high school. But it was college for me when I
Mm,
figured out that freedom, go find, let's talk
right.
about finding who we are. We're finding who we are in college, right at 18, 19 years old.
Yep.
And when you have no clue who you are and you grew up in this beautiful little bubble
Yep.
and it
Bubble.
pops, I'm curious. I would like to know how your bubble popped.
Yeah, it happened quickly and very dramatically and abruptly. I would say that it actually, so for me, and it kind of comes back to the adopted as well as kind of the where I ended up landing. And don't get me wrong, I am beyond blessed and forever grateful. I love my parents. Wouldn't trade them for the world, and beyond thankful for the opportunities that they gave us growing up, that all things considered, I probably wouldn't have had if other things had gone differently. So
And for those who don't know or haven't seen Tyler on TikTok, you guys, when he says he loves family, like, I'm trying
I
not to
do.
tear up. He loves his family. His dad is his best friend, and
Yeah.
it shows. It's so adorable, and I
Yeah.
understand that he has those feelings. But if you ever see Tyler around his family, that is the most genuine thing, honestly, that I know of him.
Yeah, my dad, you're right. He's my best friend. Um, my mom, if you were in a situation where I had one phone call to make, it yeah. I mean, I'm 34 years old, but at the end of the day, yeah, I'm still calling my mom or my dad because I
Yes.
know that they're the people that I probably trust most in this world, and I know that they would show up no matter what that looks like. So it is what it is.
Exactly. Exactly.
But it did start so really early for me. It actually was like elementary school.
Oh.
So I know. So hear me out.
Whoa.
What happened was, I don't know if other people had this, but we had this thing where it was like bring your parent to work or to school
Yep.
day. Um, and I remember it was probably fifth grade. So, 10, 11 years old.
Hmm.
And I remember sitting in the room and looking around the classroom and thinking, I look nothing like my parents. And I had always known, like, my parents had always been upfront, like, you and your sister are adopted. Kind of here's what our journey was to wind up with you guys, with us. But I had never really, the light bulb had never really turned on like all the way. Right.
Yeah.
So I remember sitting there and looking around and thinking, like, something is very different here. And now, like, the light bulb went on.
One of these things is not
Um,
like the other.
exactly. And I remember being very just like confused by it. And that really at age 10 was really kind of the start of just that confusion. From about 10 to 14, spent a lot of, that really led me down a road of I was confused, I was angry, like kind of then hit those adolescent years, and the kind of defiance kicked in. Like it really, there were a lot of rough years. That now in hindsight, when I look back, kind of all makes sense why things went the way they did. Um, but at the time, being 15, just really confused.
Absolutely.
Led me down a path that had friends, and I still consider them friends, but we all had one thing in common, in that we had really big questions about ourselves and about life that we didn't know who to turn to. We didn't know how to find those. We didn't even know what questions to ask. Um,
Were
but we
these
were
other
all
Korean adopted American friends,
a
or were
few of
these,
them, a
or
few of
were
them.
they just
Yeah.
some also just transient friends who also were figuring themselves out?
Yeah. A little combination of all of that. And I think we all were just lost and angry and confused, and yeah, just led to a few years of just complete and utter rebellion from anything that was told to us to be, decent and expected and the norm. It's like,
Of
well, screw your
Edina
norm. Watch
children.
this. Yep. Pretty much. Yeah. Oh, Edina does it this way. We're going to go this way. And that's what I did, So it's, by the time I hit 14, 13, 14, 15, it was riding around with older kids smoking cigarettes in cars, drinking beer and smoking weed. I mean, it was game on by the
Sure.
time I was 16. And then you go off to college where there's no oversight, and it really
None.
took off and escalated kind of from there. So that's really where it peaked, was out in those Denver years, which is why it ultimately brought me back to Minnesota.
So
But
what you said you didn't finish college in Denver, obviously.
mm-hmm.
I didn't finish college. I had a full ride with my mom. Not my mom was going to pay for all my college, so I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
have any student debt. I really kind of ended up having to uh, realize through hardships that because of what I did, I was no longer going to be able to rely on my mom. So what happened in college? I know
Okay.
obviously you
Yeah.
totally went hog wild, but
Yeah.
what was the addiction what was the problem, the substance problem that brought you back home?
Yep. So the joined a fraternity.
Oh
Terrible.
shit.
Yep. Yep.
Never
So
mind. We're good.
I'm
You said it all.
I am an SAE. That, yeah. But it really peaked where I was living in a house, just drinking a lot, just daily, heavily. A lot of other drugs mixed in, and then managed to somehow find myself acquainted with a guy who lived in the neighborhood. Wasn't a student, but was rather a coke dealer.
They're for the students.
Therefore, for the students, yeah.
Yes.
And
They're for the
somehow,
students.
yeah, and then somehow managed to find myself being said driver for this gentleman. So lots of adventures with him.
Wow.
So yeah, and then yeah, and it didn't. So the funny thing is, well, it's not really funny. It is now that I look back,
Right.
but
Right.
but I was barely treading water out in Denver, like barely, but enough to keep to be there still. Um,
Hide
but I
from your
came
parents.
pretty much, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Um, there's some legal stuff thrown in there that
Yep.
uh, don't know that I'm necessarily at liberty to talk about very much.
Fair
But
enough.
there was that. And then I was home for my sister's high school graduation. My sister is two years younger than me.
Okay.
So I was home for my sister's graduation and ended up getting completely blackout drunk. And all I remember from that night is driving and winding up somehow at the airport from Edina.
Oh my God.
I winded up at the airport. And then my phone died. And that was back in the day that phones, we didn't have, not many
Once
people
it's
had
dead, it's
smartphones
dead.
with
It's
GPS.
done.
Yeah. It was one of those like brick Nokia phones that,
Yep.
yeah. And once it's gone, it's gone. So didn't know how to get home. And I remember walking into like a gas station and like trying to buy a cell phone charger, for the car. Obviously, couldn't figure out like which one I needed or any. It's a miracle that that gas station person didn't just like tackle me and call the cops. I don't know how they didn't.
Oh my God.
But yeah, eventually somehow ended up back at home, and then the next day, and those are really kind of the only memories I have. Next day, waking up to my dad kicking my bed, being like, "What did you do?" And I went outside with him, and the car, the whole like front end and side was completely like smashed up, just destroyed. It's a miracle that it even drove home.
And you didn't get
Um,
pulled over?
and I didn't get pulled, and I didn't kill anybody. I mean, it was a
Holy
miracle
shit.
in and of itself that I even made it safely home and that no one got hurt in the process.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Come to find out later that a buddy of mine, I apparently made an appearance over at Calhoun. And, Lake Calhoun around the lake is a very narrow one way street.
Yep.
Well, I was going the wrong way, doing about 60
Oh my
the
God.
wrong way, smashing into every parked car along the way, hopped a median, and then that's when I took off and ended up at the airport. I have had zero memory of that.
Oh my God.
So, next step from there was, well, you're not going back to Denver. And your next stop is rehab.
So that was it. Like your
So that
parents
was
were
it.
like, that was it.
They had
Cut and
already
dry.
knew between all the legal stuff that had happened out there, and they weren't like, they're not stupid. Like they knew something was going on. They didn't know exactly what. But when I came home and was 110 pounds soaking wet and looked like I hadn't slept in days and just looked terrible, and then that, I mean, it was like, okay, enough is enough. So into treatment I went and never really left Minnesota after that.
So in treatment, did you go willingly? Did you
Oh yeah.
understand what your parents were saying?
So yes, but
Okay.
it was under the pretense of you're gonna go to treatment. I went to Hazelden up in Plymouth.
Oh,
You're gonna go to treatment, and then if you finish treatment, then we can talk about you going back to Denver.
that's
So
brave. That's very
willing,
brave.
yeah. So I don't know if willing necessarily. I mean, sure,
Right.
but it all was with the end game of this is what I got to do to get back there.
Right. If I can just learn how to drink, learn how to party,
Yeah.
learn how to behave, then I can go do what I want to do.
I can twiddle my thumbs and say the right things and, talk the talk for 28 days and then I'm out. So, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Midway. And then, so what I didn't know, and was probably the biggest turning point, what I didn't realize was that toward your end of stay in treatment, the counselors provide an aftercare recommendation. I had never been to treatment, so I didn't know that. I thought it
I've
was
never
just
been either, so this is
right.
new for me.
Yeah. I thought you just went in and then you did whatever time you signed up for and then you left.
Right.
No, they provide aftercare recommendations. At least Hazelden does. And my aftercare recommendation was to do an additional inpatient 90 days at their extended care wing, which was still the same building. Which needless, I was shockingly not too happy about. But parents said, "Yep, sign them up."
What? All right.
Yep, yep.
Oh,
Um, I actually ended up saying, "Screw this," and I hitched a ride out of there because I was 21 at that point. Like I wasn't a minor. I signed myself out. I was like, "I'm not doing your 90 days." Signed myself out. Found a way to get back to Edina, and I'll always remember this moment. And I'm so thankful. The greatest gift my parents, and I know that especially for my dad, was the hardest thing he's ever had to do, is when I showed up at their house at like 11 o'clock at night, and they thought I was still there. um, they said, "You're not welcome here.
oh,
You didn't want to stay. You don't have to stay, but you're not coming home."
oh God.
Yep. And was obviously very pissed about that at the
Right.
middle of the night. But they held their ground, and I ended up kind of calling a good friend of mine who we've been best friends since kindergarten. We're still best friends to this day. Um, and he kind of met me somewhere, and he's the only person that probably in this world that could have convinced me, and he did, that you need to go back. Um, he's the only person that I probably would have listened to and not gotten like really angry at. So thankfully he answered when I called. Um, I'm sure seeing me calling at midnight was already kind of a dead giveaway that something was up. So
Wow.
he drove me back. I went back, ended up doing another 90, and that really was a turning point. Those additional 90 days made all the difference in the world. Yeah, I mean, the treatment experience itself is a whole topic that we could spend a lot of time talking about. So
I'd personally love it because when I got sober, my spouse at the time, because of my erratic behavior and my infidelity and things like that,
yeah,
his response was, "Well, maybe if you go into treatment, I'll disappear with our son and fuck around on you like you did on
right,
me." So my thought is, holy shit, I can't go in here. I can't lose my son. I can't lose my
right.
like. So I did 90 and 90 in the rooms,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
which definitely works. Don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong.
Yep.
I think it's also a little bit difficult though because you're able to go home,
Mm-hmm.
and when you constantly are putting yourself back into a toxic environment,
Mm-hmm.
it works, but there's no roadmap at that time. And my first two sponsors, the first one tried to borrow money from me all the time. And I didn't realize because I was so young in sobriety, I'm like,
Oh
oh, you
yeah,
just want to be my friend. Bleh.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
next one was just as narcissistic and controlling as my spouse at the time. So I
So,
I really took a chance. So for me, sobriety didn't take hold until probably 8 years, 9 years, and I'm an
mm,
11 years sober. But I didn't start
yeah,
working the steps
yeah,
because I was going to meetings. I was, doing my reading,
yeah.
the plug in the jug, so I was fine, which you're not fine at all. So a part of me
Yep.
kind of wishes I would
Yep.
have had that experience
Yep.
in rehab because I feel like it's a little bit more consistent, right? Like
Sure.
you detox, you go because I was
Yep.
detoxing for 3 weeks and
Oh yeah.
I swear to God, like as much as I want to numb the pain sometimes, I never want to be hungover again or
Mm,
detox.
no.
And it's a disease of progression and I don't know if I would. I don't know what would happen,
Uh,
to be
yeah.
honest. And I don't want to
Yeah.
know.
No.
So for me, finally getting my sponsor and doing the steps was really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did mine through Celebrate Recovery, which I don't knock. That's fine. I am more of an AA person. I
Mm-hmm.
prefer AA than I do a faith-based program, but there
Right.
is obviously it's a spiritual program. So
Yep.
my faith and my sobriety go together, but they're also separate. So
100%.
we've obviously looked at how powerlessness and unmanageable you absolutely were, but
Little bit.
what the acceptance and
Yeah.
believing in a higher power in the program, what was your higher power? Did you have a higher power or was it the program? Is it the program?
You know, so I growing up, we went to church,
Yep.
and I was um, baptized and confirmed, and so, but for me, it was not God, the religious God.
Right.
For a lot of people, it is, and I realized the biggest thing that I've learned is that anybody and everybody who really wants a life in recovery, and not just sobriety but recovery, like
Yes. Active recovery.
active recovery, the destination may be the same or very similar,
Yeah.
the what we want to get out of it, but
Yes.
there's an infinite number of paths to take to get there. And it does the one thing in recovery that still to this day really kind of irks me is when I am talking to someone who is hellbent that their way is the only way or the right way, or in a meeting that if you don't follow this path you won't succeed, or if you don't do things in this order, or if you don't, like it's our way or the like.
Right.
I personally don't believe. I think that everyone's program looks different. I know
Oh,
that
yeah.
nowadays the like when I went through treatment, the notion of you can be sober but still smoke weed. You can still be sober. You can still
Yes.
consider yourself in sobriety as long as you're not using your drug of choice.
That does not make sense.
That wasn't a thing when I went through. It
No. No,
was an
I
all
am
or
clean
nothing
from
kind of deal.
everything.
So now, with that said, like I don't personally subscribe to that philosophy because I know that that wouldn't work for me, and I know that from experience because it's my addictive personality.
Correct.
Because like I've had relapses,
Oh,
I've
you
had
have.
slips, I have,
Okay.
so
Okay.
I know that like, look, I went into treatment for alcohol and cocaine and marijuana.
Okay.
When I relapsed, it was on benzos.
Oh,
I had
shoot.
never touched it. I had never touched that stuff when I was like using it ever.
See, and I was the pills girl. I
Yeah.
never injected or snorted anything. I was the
Yeah.
pills, acid,
Yeah. I
alcohol,
mean, I was
marijuana
in,
person.
yeah. I very much out in Denver. I was the mindset of I wish that I was born in the wrong era. I belonged in like the late '60s.
Oh, okay,
Right.
Tyler.
So right, right. My little Edina polo shirts belonging in the '60s.
Right. I'm not quite sure you would have gone over well at a Grateful Dead concert.
No, probably not. Probably not. But in my mind, it made sense. Yeah,
Oh, sure.
I was in active addiction. Cut me a break. But I don't. I would never, just because someone else, what works for someone else. Look, at the end of the day, if you are happy,
Yes.
if you are like and genuinely happy, not like if you
Yeah.
are showing up for the people, show up, if you're holding true to your obligations, if
Yep.
like if you have found a way to live and be a decent person,
Yes.
it's not for me to judge how you got there.
Right.
I might not make the same choices. I might not
Right.
say like, just because I really like to do coke, well, as long as I stick to like heroin or something, I'll be fine. Like,
Right. Yeah. That doesn't
so
work for you and I.
doesn't work for me. But if it
Right.
works for you,
Right.
not,
No, and I think that's definitely something
yeah,
we should definitely address later, because
yeah. I
there are people
think it's called
that I know.
California Recovery.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
they don't take pills, but they'll drink alcohol. They can't have alcohol, but they'll smoke weed, but they're in recovery. So
right,
listen, people, what we're not doing is we're not shaming you. We're not
right.
saying your program doesn't work, you can't
No,
touch that substance. What we are saying is, due to our addictive personalities, this
yeah.
is what works for us. We have to, Tyler and
Mhm.
I have to be in full, active, sober, don't
Yeah.
touch anything
No,
sobriety.
yeah. If it
And
works for you,
yeah,
then work it.
right. It works if you work
Yeah,
it. Like, and as long
100%.
as you are not hindering anyone else's sobriety, as long as you're not
Yeah,
hurting anyone else's sobriety or
yeah,
yourself, by all means,
yeah,
we are not going to stand in the way or tell you that you're wrong. We work
no,
our program. And as you heard, Tyler is not one that's, banging on the God's door every day. He's got a different
no.
program.
Yeah,
Whereas for me, I choose to start my day with my prayers and my gospels and
yeah.
blah, 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 and all that. So your program of recovery is your program of
Hmm.
recovery. And I think the most important thing for me is exactly what you just said, Tyler. And in a different aspect, is if I do today what I did yesterday,
Hmm.
I'm sure to not drink.
Hmm.
So if we are working our active program, no matter how you
Yeah.
work it, what are things that you do day to day to stay sober? Meditation, readings, talk to your sponsor. Talk to me about sponsorship. Do you
Yeah.
work out? What are some of those things that you do to stay sober one day at a time?
Yeah. Um, I think the pandemic definitely threw a little bit of a wrench
Yeah,
in routines, and that was hard to
you sure
navigate.
did.
I'll pause. I'll answer that. I want to answer your previous question about spirituality and higher power real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah.
Because I realized I went off as I usually do on tangents, and I never
That's
actually
okay.
answered your question.
That's
Um,
okay.
s- so for me, it was I went to church, but it wasn't. It's my higher power isn't God. I
Yes.
had a realization, and it was in treatment, that there are things that happen every day that no matter how hard I try, no matter what I do, I will never have control over. And it's as simple as the sun coming up.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, you cannot control the sunrise. You
No.
cannot control what temperature it's going to be outside.
Yeah.
And it was that realization of, because up until that point, people, it was like I was able to manipulate, right?
Oh,
And control
100%.
people. But then when you take it back to something simple, and it's like, okay, all right, I might not be as powerful as I thought. Like, it was that simple realization that there are things and forces, and they don't have to be like religious based or necessarily
Yeah.
spiritual, but things that you might think you're the shit,
Yeah.
but you can't control. And that was very humbling. Like, for me, that was very
Yeah.
humbling. It's like, oh, okay. So that's what I kind of turned to for me, is realizing that there's a lot, and that's helped me a lot too, with the sense of when life feels out of control, like being able to kind of not let that eat away at me too. It's like, you know what? It's one of those things, and
Yeah.
let's focus on what I can have a say over,
Yeah.
and let the rest go. So, um, day to day, I think for me, self care is something that I make sure to do every day, even if it's just like at the end of a day, flipping on the TV or scrolling through TikTok for an hour before going to bed. Like,
Or annoying
just
your
like,
poor wife to make a video with you.
well, that's why she goes to bed earlier than I do, so that I don't end up annoying her. But yes.
I love
Um,
her. Oh.
but that's self-care, and I think that we live in a culture, in a world that I think it's gotten better, but undervalues the importance of self-care, because we're very much like, time is money. Like, you
Yes.
always have to be doing something, you always have to be getting better, you always have, because if you sit around, someone else is going to pass you, right?
Right.
So heaven forbid you need to take a few days and just like turn off phones and turn off
Yes.
communications and go somewhere where like no one could reach you even if they wanted, and
Yep.
just like take a day or two to just like recenter. um Even if that
Yeah.
means turning off everything and going and taking a nap, right? Like,
I'm the queen of
listen to
naps. I
what
got
you
you.
need. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, and it's so important though, and I mean, and that's okay, because I've learned that if I am not in the right place, like with myself, when I look in a mirror, I can't be the best. I can't show up as the best husband that I could be. I
Yep.
can't show up as the best father that I could be. I'm not going to be the best at my job that I could be. If I'm not in a good headspace, I can't show up for other people.
Yeah.
So it might seem selfish at times that it's like, hey, Anna, I know that we've got a list of things that we have to figure out and talk about right now. I need just like an hour.
Yep. And that's something I have finally started exercising.
Yeah.
My husband has MS and PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
He was single for a very long time prior to meeting me. Um, and so for him, when he has a thought, he's like,
Mm-hmm.
gotta tell you now, and I gotta tell you everything about it, and here's my list, and here's everything I want to do. I'm like, whoa.
We have to
Like,
solve all the world's problems yesterday, right?
yes. And
Right.
I understand that about him now. I
Yeah.
finally, it's starting to click a little bit, but now I'm able
Mm-hmm.
to say, listen, I need an hour on the Peloton.
Right.
I need to do some reading. I need to record my podcast. There's like,
Yeah.
I'm finally able to set boundaries with him.
Yep.
And setting boundaries with him is helping me set boundaries with other things too,
Mm-hmm.
which is that
Yeah.
self care, man. It's
Yeah.
really, I'm able to finally soak it all in, which is
Yeah.
really, really nice. And one thing that you do for yourself, so your self care, is you play softball.
I do. I do. 10
So tell
years
me about
now.
that. I'm curious.
Yeah. So, St. Paul, and it's grown. It's so cool to see. It's grown a lot over the last year. So I'm in my 10th season. I'm the old guy now at Friday nights, and I
That's
feel it.
awesome.
Trust me. But yeah, it was a league that started through kind of the St. Paul sober kind of fellowship.
Okay.
It was real small at first. It was maybe 4 or 6 teams, and
That's still a
they
good number to start out
it's
with.
still, yeah. I mean, you think about the size of the community that St. Paul has, though.
Right.
And it was a lot of like, the meeting over here would like pull a team together, and uh, sober house over here would pull a team together, and then they would play. And everyone knew everybody else from. So it started off as just kind of something to do, a safe place to go. It's Friday nights, and that's for a reason.
Absolutely.
Um, so
Yep.
it really started off as like, hey, look, here's the deal. Like, all these newbies in recovery that like wind up in Minnesota, half of you didn't even know where Minnesota was on a map before you got here, and now you're living here and trying to be sober. Like, if you want
and our
someplace
and
to
our sports
go,
teams are horrible, so you don't have anything to do anyways.
exactly, you're not missing much there.
No.
The Wolves are going to be leaving us anyways, so
And the
it's
stars
fine.
left, so what's
And the
left?
Stars, yeah, exactly. We all saw the Vikings game last Sunday. Uh,
I'm
um,
really tired of the wide left and wide right, quite honestly.
jeez, it's yeah. But if you want some place to go, full of fellowship, safe place, and if nothing more, a place to kill a few hours so that you don't go out on a Friday night and go somewhere that you shouldn't go, around people that will make sure that like you're okay and make sure you get home okay. Come play ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's grown a lot. Now the league, I want to say we have 3 divisions now. We have a rec division, minor, and a major division. I think last time I counted, there's probably 35 teams now.
Oh my God, you guys.
Yeah, it's huge now.
That's awesome.
My buddy Blake is the commissioner of it, and he, yeah, spends a lot of time. He's been in softball world for probably 35, 40 years, so he loves seeing it grow. But it's great. No, and we send sober teams down to national tournaments in Vegas and Florida, and they usually
What?
win. They usually
Well,
win. Yeah.
we are from Minnesota, so
So, well, I think it helps that everyone else shows up with coolers full of beer, and by the end of the tournament, they're all kind of seeing three balls coming at them, and we're all
yes.
sober as a whistle, ready to rock and roll. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, I wonder, would your commissioner ever be willing to come on and talk about the
Oh, he'd love it.
program?
Yeah,
Oh,
100%.
that'd be, how awesome would that be? I would love to because I mean,
Yeah.
not that I've been in Minnesota for 8 years, but I am assuming back home, St. Paul, Minneapolis, large area.
Hmm.
Obviously the pandemic's a huge issue, and you're right, Friday nights, we're
Yeah.
starting to go back out, we're starting to do things, and I think there's probably not much knowledge of safe places at this time
Yeah.
to go for people.
Yeah, and we met. We did not play. We played a little. We got about a half season in last year, and then we felt like it things ramped up with COVID, and it just wasn't safe to have everyone coming out because the players come out, families come out, they bring their kids, their dogs. I mean, there's a ton of people that show up every week.
That's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, and Blake last year decided at one point like it's just not safe for all
Well,
of
you
us to
gotta you do
be
have to
out
be
here.
safe. I mean, there is
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So that was a
So
smart decision, but I bet you're
yeah.
back, glad to be back this year.
This year we met again and said, "All right, what's everyone thinking?" And yeah, I mean, people can have thoughts and feelings about the decision, but we did decide that everyone that wanted to play kind of understood kind of the risk.
Yep.
Um, and if you wanted to, sit out, that's totally fine. If you wanted to play,
Yep.
just everyone kind of understood what you were signing up for. That it's
Absolutely.
hard to social distance in a dugout,
It is.
you know.
It is.
Um, So, but no, we're out there playing, and
That's
it's great.
awesome.
It's
Where
great.
do you guys play on Friday nights?
So, out in Maplewood,
Okay.
couple fields, so off of like 94 and White Bear. We were at Goodrich Park. Now we're at Pioneer Park in Little Canada and McKnight Field. So,
Awesome. All right.
yeah,
Well, you guys heard it. They have options for you. And even if you don't like softball, you can go and commune with
come on
some
out.
friends on
Yeah,
Friday night.
yeah. We had a tournament a couple weeks ago. There was a DJ and food and
What?
bouncy house, and oh
Ah, I
yeah,
love bouncy houses.
yeah, yeah. We love
Well,
it.
that's so cool. Well, next time I'm home, I'm definitely, well, it won't be obviously for a while now, but when I'm home and if you guys are playing, that would be a lot of fun.
All
So,
summer, and we got fall ball. So next time you're in town, yeah,
oh my God,
yeah.
really?
Mm-hmm.
It's 90 degrees here today, so
I think it's
when you say fall ball, I go, oh,
yeah,
but
65 and
uh,
slight breeze out there. Oh yeah,
I really
perfect.
miss home sometimes. So,
Hmm.
well, thank you, Tyler, for taking time to talk to me.
Yeah,
I really enjoy this, and I
I
hope
love it.
that people can see a couple of different aspects. And I think it's important that people understand there are different journeys to sobriety.
Mm.
And I think we're going to have Tyler back on, guys. I think this is something that we have good vibes. And I think I've got a lot to learn from you yet because it
I
sounds
think
like your
likewise.
adventures are definitely something I need to know about.
We're just scratching the surface. I'm an open book, so
Absolutely. All
yeah.
right. Well, and Tyler is on TikTok. His Instagram is private. I will put his funny TikTok little address up on our website, and we will definitely see you guys next week. Tyler, thank you again for your time,
Thank you. Love it.
and we look forward to seeing you later. Bye,
Sounds
guys.
good. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on this episode of a Sober Girls podcast. I hope we were able to help you on your road through recovery, or if anything, help you understand that if you are not active in recovery but want to be, that you are not alone. We are here for you. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow us wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss another episode. Also, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at A Sober Girls Pod, and online for show notes and other information about sobriety at asobergirlspodcast.podbean.com. I hope that you have a great rest of your week, and until next time, fam, be well.